Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending where you're watching from. Welcome back here to the Launchpad. My name is Zach, and here at the Launchpad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space. And today, we are very excited to be bringing you our live coverage of today's hot fire engine test for SLS for the Artemis moon missions. We were planning on going live a little bit later today, but NASA has been running ahead of schedule. Jim Bridenstine tweeted out that they're over an hour ahead of schedule. So they are going to be starting their live coverage here in just a couple of moments. So we're going to bring that to you here. And we're going to talk a little bit about SLS and see how today's tests go. One really kind of exciting fact about today's test is that the four engines are massively previously flown. They have been in storage since the space shuttle era. So over a decade. The four engines they're testing today are E-2045, which flew 12 times already, including STS-95. They've got E-2056, which flew 4 times with STS-114 included in there. E-2058 had 6 flights with STS-133, and E-2060 through 3 times with STS-135. So these are already proven rockets, but not all together and not in a very long time. They've all been tested individually, but today, for the first time with SLS, we are going to see 4 engines ignited and run for a full up to 8 minutes, simulating a regular launch for Artemis. This is the final test in the Green Run series for SLS's center core, and they are very excited to get this underway because this means we are just one step closer to seeing that first test flight of SLS, hopefully in the very near future, getting us ready to go back to the moon. A little bit more about the center core here. It's 212 feet long. It has a diameter of 27.6 feet, so that's 64.6 meters long and 8.4 meters in diameter. It weighs over 188,000 pounds, or 85.275 kilograms, empty. That's just the weight of the rocket, and it has quite the fuel capacity. It can hold up to 2 million liters, or 317,000 pounds of liquid hydrogen, LH2, as well as 742,000 liters, or 1.86 million pounds of liquid oxygen. Now, these are super chilled as well, and they're excited to get this underway because it means we're that one step closer to being able to jump on and do the first test flight of SLS, which is going to be Exploration Mission 1, which will take a car payload into a low Earth orbit, but also to the moon. So we are about 90 seconds away here from NASA starting up their coverage here. A little bit about us here at the Launchpad. We try to cover everything we can with space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space. We're excited to have you along with us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to know when we go live. There's a lot of really new, smaller rocket organizations that are doing their testing this year and getting into orbit, and we're excited to bring those to you, as well as covering obviously the big players with SpaceX, SLS, Rocket Lab, Virgin Orbit, and some others for it. We're a small team here. It's just me, myself, and I, and we're excited to have you here. We hope you'll join us every week for our weekly updates. Every Monday evening, we take a look back at everything that took place in the past 7 days and everything that you can look forward to in the next 7 to 10 days, as there is a lot of things going on. I think there's still about 20 rockets that were expected to be flown or tested in January this year. Obviously, some will get pushed into February, but I mean, February's got a big block of flights as well. So space is really gearing up, and we are really excited for that here at the Launchpad, and we're excited to have you along with us. If you have a news tip or something you want us to research to include on our channel, either in our weekly updates or in a video, make sure to let us know in the comments or connect with us on Twitter, or best thing to do, join our Discord. There'll be a link in the below. We've got an awesome little group of people on there that really have come together and are talking, and we love to have you as part of that. On our Discord, there's a spot there that you can submit tips or links and different things for us to check out, because the Launchpad is something for everybody. We want all of you to be part of it. So we're just waiting for NASA to go live here. for it. If you don't know what SLS is NASA's new rocket that will be returning NASA into orbit and back to the moon, so replacing the Apollo era. It's similar in some ways to the space shuttle with this type of engines. It had 2 solid boosters and then a center core. With the space shuttle, the center core did not have engines. With SLS, it does. So in total, the rocket will have up to 6 engines, 4 on the center core and 2 on the side boosters. NASA has currently started stacking the SRBs, the side boosters, and we are excited to do that. And it looks like NASA is going live, so we're going to bring that up here right now.
10, 9, start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Artemis mission.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. We are bringing you live coverage as Artemis fires up for today's Green Run test, a major milestone on America's mission to land the first woman and the next man on the moon with the Artemis program. Good evening, I'm Lee D'Angelo, and just a little over a mile behind me is the historic B-Test complex where NASA tested rocket stages for the mighty Saturn V rocket and the space shuttle. Today, in just about 30 minutes, we will test the core stage of our new Space Launch System rocket, also known as the SLS. What you see behind me mounted into the B-2 test stand is the most powerful core stage in the world. This SLS rocket is set to make its first flight from NASA's Kennedy Space Center later this year on the Artemis I mission, which will send an uncrewed Orion spacecraft beyond the moon and back to Earth. We're going to learn a lot more about Artemis, SLS, the core stage, and today's test, which we call the Green Run Hot Fire. We'll also be talking with NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, hearing from some of those who have made this all happen and getting a unique perspective from someone who knows how it feels to ride a rocket into space, astronaut Tracy Caldwell Dyson. We also want to hear from you, and for that we have Apollonia Acker standing by to help you connect on social media. Apollonia?
Hi, I'm Apollonia Acker. I'm a social media coordinator with the communications teams here at Stennis Space Center. And today I'm bringing your comments live to NASA TV. And we're glad to have you following along on all of our social media platforms. We also invite you to follow us at NASA Artemis on Twitter. And we are live on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Data TV, Daily Motion, and Twitch. We're going to be sharing some of your posts, so submit your questions and your posts using hashtag AskNASA. Also, we've been asking you, what would you take on a trip to the moon in celebration of today's hot fire test? And you've submitted your moon kits using hashtag NASA Moon Kit. We're going to be tracking your reaction online, and I'm just excited to see this in person. Back to you, Lee.
Thanks so much, Apollonia, and I'm so glad we get to share this event online. We might normally have hundreds of folks on hand here to see this in person, but of course, we're following COVID protocols for social distancing. Those of us who are here are looking forward to some fire and smoke and a lot of noise. I've got Alex Cagnola here with me. He's a core stage engineer who can tell us about the test. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I want to start with the basics. What is the core stage? How does it fit into SLS?
Well, the core stage is really the powerhouse of our entire space launch system. The core stage has 2 propellant tanks, one of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, 4 RS-25 engines, more than 18 miles of cables, all of our electronics, avionics boxes, everything we consider the brains of the rocket, and of course all the plumbing that goes into feeding our fuel to our 4 RS-25 engines.
Sounds pretty big.
Yeah, it's very big. You know, our core stage is 212 feet long. You know, the most powerful core stage ever built, so we're super excited to see it be tested today.
So we're testing today. We're not showing. This isn't a demonstration. What does a successful test look like?
Right, and that's very important to remember. You know, we'll be testing the rocket. We're still, you know, learning things about our rocket as we further test. So, you know, we might hear some test conductor audio interrupt our talk, and we'll be relaying that message to everybody. You know, we might fire a few minutes before, or a few minutes after our scheduled time. You know, we're really looking to get some engineering data once we do ignite all 4 engines, and that may include, you know, moving the engines a little bit, or throttling up or throttling down. You know, we're going to be testing everything we can to get all the data we need.
You're the expert. I'm glad you're here with us. I'm going to have a lot of questions for you throughout the show. So thank you again. And we're getting set to chat with NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine about the Artemis program. But first, let's hear this message from Stennis Director Rick Gilbrecht.
Hello, I'm Rick Gilbrecht, Director of Stennis Space Center, and I wanted to welcome you to today's Green Run. I'm here at the base of the B-2 test stand where you can see the Space Launch System core stage installed in the stand. That very stage will roar to life today, producing over 2 million pounds of thrust for what we hope to be a 500-second full-duration hot fire. The SLS was designed at Marshall Space Flight Center, was assembled just down the road at the Michoud Assembly Facility by Boeing, is powered by 4 Rocketdyne RS-25 engines, and today we will do our part to verify it for flight. I'm always humbled and feel blessed to lead such a talented Stennis workforce, and also to be associated with all the talented folks in the SLS program. I'm proud of them, and you should be too. The men and women of NASA, Boeing, and Aerojet Rocketdyne have worked to make this green run a reality. They've overcome many, many challenges, especially this year with COVID, with a busy hurricane season, and a lot of technical issues that they've all overcome and persevered to make today possible. Personally, for me, this will be the highlight of my 29-year NASA career. I became hooked on NASA at the ripe old age of 7 when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon for the first time in 1969. Well, guess what? We're going to make history again today, and I'm glad you're here to share it with me. Welcome to the Artemis generation. We're Go for Green Run.
We've shown you a little bit about what we're doing today, but now let's talk about why. Joining us for that is NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. Jim, welcome to Mississippi.
Well, thank you, Lee. It's great to be here.
I want to start with the overall picture. Talk to me about the Artemis program.
Well, we're going to the moon. This time we're doing it unlike we've ever done before. We're going with commercial partners. We're going with international partners. We're going to learn how to live and work on another world for long periods of time using the resources of the other world. We're going to use the resources of the moon to live and work with a purpose, because ultimately we want to go to Mars. So we're going to build the capacity to live and work on another world so that we can go to Mars. And the reason we have to do that, Mars and Earth are aligned on the same side of the sun once every 26 months. So when you go to Mars, once you're there, it takes about 9 months to get there. Once you're there, you have to be willing to stay as it orbits the sun until Earth and Mars are aligned again. The moon is always with the Earth wherever we are around the sun. So it's the perfect proving ground. And of course, there's tons of science we can get from the moon. We can get a lot of information of the early solar system because of the subatomic charged particles that have been coming from the sun for billions of years and impacting the moon that we can't get from here on Earth because we have a magnetosphere that protects the Earth and an active geology and an active atmosphere and a hydrosphere. So the moon is a lot about science and data. It's about the early solar system. It's also about astrophysics, looking deeper into space than ever before, because the moon gives us an opportunity to have this very quiet area from an electromagnetic spectrum perspective, a very quiet area on the far side of the moon where we can look way out into deep space and in fact look back into time, if you can imagine that. So we're going to the moon sustainably. We're going for science, discovery, exploration, but we're also going as a proving ground so that we can go to Mars.
It sounds like you're excited about this all the time, not
Yes.
just today, but let's bring it back to Earth, actually a little bit closer, just a mile away. Talk to me about SLS and how unique this is.
So the SLS rocket is the most powerful rocket ever built in the history of humanity. The core stage has 4 RS-25 engines. These are very similar to the Space Shuttle main engines. And of course, we're going to light this rocket today for a period of 8 minutes, which is the amount of time we're going to need to light it for a launch. So what we're doing today is we are replicating as much as possible a launch. And we have to remember that what we're testing today, this is a test vehicle. It's also the flight hardware. This is the same rocket that by the end of this year will be launching the Orion crew capsule around the moon. Now, by the end of this year, that Orion crew capsule will be uncrewed when it goes around the moon. But by 2023, we're going to send American astronauts around the moon, and by 2024, we're going to be landing on the moon.
Well, thank you so much, Administrator Bernstein. I'm sure you want to get somewhere a little warmer where you'll be able to watch the test.
Great to be with you.
It's great to be with you, too. Thank you so much. It was just a few weeks ago that we announced the astronauts for the Artemis program. Let's take a look and meet those astronauts right now.
So I'm just going to jump in here while they're showing this video here. If you want to take a look at it, you can jump over to the NASA feed or onto our social later. We'll try to get it on there as well. But no, it's a really exciting day. It's awesome that Jim is there in person. And yeah, as he said, like, we are not decades away from going back to the moon. We are a year, not even a year. This year, we will have a rocket that will go around the moon again. We will have humans back around the moon within like 24 to 30 months. We're going to be landing on the moon within 48 months. And I think that's just something, you know, super exciting. The amount of science that came out of the Apollo era and now the shuttle and ISS and Soyuz era that we use on an everyday life is huge. There's so much to it. And the ISS was talking about this not long ago, that they're looking at being able to take cells from humans on Earth, send them up, grow something that person needs because it's 0G, and then send it back to Earth. But we can't do that same growing here on Earth because the gravity is too strong on the cells. There's so much about space that is not just the idea of exploration, but it's the idea of how can we further us as humanity and a society. And I think it's super exciting when we start to think about looking at, you know, we are all here from Earth. We are all one type of people. We are all human. And we are now going to go live on the moon, and we are going to go live on Mars. And that's an exciting thing to see, and it's exciting that we're living through it. This year has been a year of differences and changes and challenges. And I think, you know, though 2021 still, we got a lot to go with the pandemic, we're very excited that we have something that we can be excited about and joyous about. And we're seeing the Artemis mission, and we're seeing the Artemis astronauts announced, and we're starting to see that next step in history come alive. So thank you for joining us. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome. My name's Zach. Here at the Launch Pad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space. And today you're watching our live coverage of the SLS Greenfire Hot Run mission. Live from Mississippi. This is the same stand that held the Apollo and the shuttle rockets while they were being tested, and today it is testing SLS. So they're giving a bit of a rundown right now of the rocket, so we're going to jump back in here and let you hear what they are saying.
This rocket provides unprecedented power and capability. Designed to reach 23 times the speed of sound and an altitude of more than 100 miles in just over 8 minutes, offering more energy, volume capacity, and payload mass than any rocket built today. Under the launch abort system, Orion and the upper stage, and between two solid rocket boosters is the heart of every SLS configuration, the core stage, towering 212 feet with a diameter of 27.6 feet and storing 537,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen and 196,000 gallons of liquid oxygen. This is the world's largest core stage ever built. The core stage for Artemis I fires up for the first time at NASA's historic B-2 test stand.
So there it is, the Artemis I SLS core stage on the B-2 test stand. The teams on site are planning to fire up those 4 RS-25 engines at 4 o'clock Eastern. Now, Alex, I know this is a culmination of tests here, but it started way long ago. Let's just go back one step and talk to me about how this was built and assembled at Michoud Assembly Facility.
Absolutely. You know, so originally the core stage was designed up in Huntsville by our SLS program team and also our Boeing team. And then, you know, manufacturing began at Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans. It's our state-of-the-art manufacturing rocket facility. It's more than 44 acres under a single roof. And obviously through the production of that rocket, we eventually moved the core stage from Michoud Assembly Facility here. You know, that process is no easy feat, you know. A lot of coordination at Michoud to be able to ship that thing and get it here in the proper amount of time. And so
you're talking about moving a rocket on the Mississippi River.
Right, yeah. So, you know, we have a barge called the Pegasus barge, and this barge is it's kind of our carrier for the core stage. You know, it's a fully covered barge, you know, and it carries our core stage all across the Mississippi and eventually to Kennedy Space Center.
And then when it lands here, how do you get it into the test stand?
So whenever the core stage does arrive to Stennis, we have a very talented and very experienced lift team, and they bring the core stage to the sand. They lift the core stage in a very slow process and lower it into the B2 test stand, secure it, and then we begin our rounds of testing.
Your rounds of testing, what does that look like?
Well, we actually have a series of green run testing. This is actually the 8th test in a full series of green run tests that we've been performing over this past year. We start with modal testing, which is kind of testing the vibrations and the structure of the rocket to see how it's going to react when we do the hot fire. And then we do things like powering on the avionics, all the electronics equipment, and then we move into activating safety systems, testing NPS components, and kind of piece by piece building on what we previously did to finally get to the point where we are today.
And today we call it the Green Run Hot Fire Test. Why is it called the Green Run?
Well, the Green Run really refers to the parts in the rocket never being flown before. So, obviously all these parts have been tested by themselves, but they've never really been tested as one giant unit. So today we're really looking to get all that data and fire for the first time. And then obviously the run refers to all the series of tests we've done to get to this point.
Well, Alex, thank you so much. Again, we're going to be coming back to you. We're also later on in the show going to start hearing some audio from the control room, so I'm going to be relying on you, Alex, to let us know what they are talking about. And the hottest part of the show today will be those 4 RS-25 engines at the bottom of the core stage. An interesting fact, these RS-25s we're testing today are repurposed from the shuttle program. These 4 engines flew on some pretty iconic shuttle missions, including one of the Hubble Space Telescope servicing missions, the historic return to space of Mercury astronaut Senator John Glenn, 6 flights to the space station, and the final space shuttle mission in 2011. So you can trace a direct line from that final shuttle flight to the first flight of SLS. We've worked with our partners at Aerojet Rocketdyne to upgrade the 16 shuttle main engines, which will power the first 4 Artemis flights. And now we're building 24 new engines using 3D printing and other manufacturing innovations to reduce cost, complexity, and manufacturing time. And a reminder, the test teams here are looking at 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern for today's hot fire test. Of course, many of the teams who worked so hard for this day can't be here in person because of social distancing, but they are still cheering us on virtually.
Hello, I'm Terrence Jones, Human Resource Business Partner at Stennis Space Center, America's largest rocket engine test complex. We're so excited for our Green Run test team at the historic B2 test stand.
So as they get started here, we are about 20 minutes away from when they are expecting to start. They did say at the beginning of the broadcast that they could start a couple minutes early, a couple minutes late. This is a test. Today is not a demonstration of SLS. It is the final test of the Green Run test line. This is the 8th test of these engines, but today's the big one. And they're very excited to have everyone here. It's really cool getting to see all these people that have worked on it. And it's sad that everybody can't be there together, but, through the power of technology, we're able to have everyone together as it is, and that's why you're here with us today. We're super excited to be covering today's launch of, or test of the SLS center core, and you can see the size of that stack behind them. This stack held the Apollo rockets during their testing and the shuttle. And as she mentioned, these rockets they're using today are historically used. They have flown collectively over 20 times on a number of different shuttle missions, including with they had John Glenn returning with the Mercury rockets. Then they were on the last shuttle mission, helping build the space station. A lot of exciting things. A little bit more about the rocket that you're seeing behind you when they're on screen there. The center core is 212 feet tall, or 64.6 meters, and the diameter is 27.6 feet, or 8.4 meters. When it's empty, it weighs over 188,000 pounds, but once loaded, we're over 2 million pounds of between the liquid oxygen and the hydrogen. And it is very exciting to see that, this is getting started and they're getting ready to do the testing. But they are getting ready. So here we go. We're going to tune in, see what they're saying. We are about 20 minutes away from the test of SLS for 8 minutes. They did put out a warning notice to anyone within 60 miles that there will be an elevated decibel level. Normally when you launch a rocket, you launch it, it goes up. You know, there's a chunk of time that it's loud because it's close to you, but it's leaving. With this one, it's ignited at full thrust or a little bit reduced at times for testing for a full 8 minutes. So that is a very long, loud time. And they want to make sure people are able to be careful and are having the right hearing protection and things like that. So you'll probably see some people don hearing protections as they get closer. They are saying that they're going to tap us into the test mission control a little bit later here, just prior to the testing, so we can hear that they are ready for it, and we are excited to listen in and see how things are going with that testing. But everything so far today, they said, has gone to plan, if not ahead of plan. They are over an hour ahead of schedule for today's flight. Test, not flight. We're so used to launching things. Test of the SLS. And we are, again, excited to be bringing that to you here. If you're new here at the Launchpad, thank you so much for joining us. My name's Zach. I'm the host here. And here at the Launchpad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space. These photos are just so cool because I remember being that age, just being like obsessed with space. And it's so cool to see another generation now doing that because, you know, we're getting back to there. We're going back to the moon. So super exciting to see. If you have questions, let us know in the chat below. Make sure to hit that like button. Helps YouTube know that other people might be interested in this, and share the video out. Here we're going to bring you uninterrupted coverage of this test so you can listen in and hear the strength of those 4 RS-25 engines when they ignite and live in. So we're going to tune in here and see what's going on down on the ground.
And when I told my husband that, he was upset that I didn't say I was bringing him and my sister Casey as well. So we're just turning the moon into a family vacation. We've been telling you a lot about the hardware we're testing today, but none of this is possible without the thousands of people at NASA, Boeing, Aerojet Rocketdyne, and the companies around the country working hard through the coronavirus pandemic and multiple hurricanes to get to this day. From here at Stennis, where we test, to the Michoud Assembly Facility in my hometown, New Orleans, where we build, to our Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, where it all began. There is so much going on behind the scenes. Here's a look at Marshall's Software Integration Lab, which represents the brains inside SLS.
I am the lead of the team that is building and testing the core stage. All the boxes you see here and the miles of cables that you see, this is what the inside of the core stage looks like. So you can see it's very complex. And what we do here is we run a lot of simulations to ensure that we have validated the systems and integrated them together. So we actually have special software that's a version of the flight software, but it's really specific for our green run test. And so that testing has also been integrated into this laboratory and with all these avionics boxes to ensure we have a successful hot fire. The best part of the job is working with all the people and the teamwork. It's been extremely fun to watch how everybody has pulled together with the same goal in mind. We have more than 1,000 companies across the United States that support us. Some of them are small mom and pop shops all the way up to the big contractors. And each one of the individuals that have been working with us have a significant contribution, and they should be extremely proud, not only when we do our Green Run Hot Fire, but when we have our first Artemis mission launch.
If you're just joining us today, we are live at NASA's Stennis Space Center in Mississippi for the Green Run Hot Fire test of the core stage of our Space Launch System rocket. At about 4 o'clock Eastern, over there at our historic B-2 test stand, we are going to fire 4 RS-25 engines for up to 8 minutes to prove this rocket is ready to launch later this year on the first Artemis mission to the moon. Again, so many people have worked to get us to this day, and even if they're not here in person, they are ready for this big milestone.
On behalf of all of NASA employees and NASA contractors at the Michoud Assembly Facility, home of America's rocket factory, we wanted to show our appreciation to everyone supporting the Green Run hot fire. We are with you, and together we are making history.
My name is Preston Jones from NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. I'd like to say congratulations to the SLS team, to the core stage team for this great milestone achievement. As we go into Green Run, let's say go Green Run. Go Green
Run! From everyone here on Team SLS, we want to wish Stennis and everyone down there at the B2 test bed a happy and successful Green Run. Go Green Run and SLS.
We have an update for you. Again, this is a live show. We are hearing what you're hearing, and we are learning as we are moving through this day of test. Alex, do you have any update for us on why we might be possibly going faster or slower, or what this is like right now?
Yeah, so our test conductor just alerted us that they're working through a few issues on the stand. You know, like we said, this is a test, so we will see some delays or some possibly, you know, some issues that we'll have to work through. It's all part of testing. So as we get more information in, we'll tell everyone and we'll work through it.
And we did talk about this. This is a test. This is not a demonstration. Why is it so important to test today?
Right. I mean, the whole point, right, is it's not a demonstration flight. You know, we're out here to test a rocket, learn as much as we can, and that'll really not only help us for the first Artemis mission, but for all of our future Artemis missions as well.
And so what are we actually learning? We've got a lot of different components, a lot of different pieces of the rocket that we're looking at. What do these tests really look like?
Well, we're really here to simulate almost what a launch would be like, right? The whole core stage with the computers and everything, it thinks that it's going to be launched. Even though we're holding it in place and testing it, we're basically going to put it through a round of testing that's going to simulate the launch. So the whole point is to make sure, one, to verify that the core stage can perform that way, and two, get the data that we will need for launch today.
You've touched on this, but how much do the NASA engineers really not know about this rocket? What are you really learning, and what are you just guessing or finding between the data points you're already guessing?
Well, obviously our team, you know, knows a lot about the rocket. You know, they've been part of this project for a long time, everywhere from, you know, the beginning of the production to designing the rocket to testing the rocket. You know, they've been part of every step along the way. But even then, you know, you're constantly still learning, and that's part of the whole process. That's part of the process with any new rocket. And so, you know, that's why Green Run is so important to us and so important to the team and so important to the future of the Artemis mission.
We've heard you describe the rocket almost like a human. We learned about the brain.
So I am going to just jump in here just a little bit while they're talking about some things. We're getting some incredible views now of the different angles that they're going to be watching. They always release really incredible videos showing a lot of angles inside the test stand during the test. So hopefully we'll see some of that live, but also they'll release probably a finalized video later in the day or tomorrow. He did mention there that it sounds like we might be having a slight delay with some issues on the test stand. We're waiting to hear more on what they say. But look at the size of those engines compared to the stairs behind them. Like, just an incredible shot for it. So yeah, they're definitely getting ready. You can see it kind of coming to life and warming up. So we're gonna keep listening in here, see what they're saying, and just find out what's going on with the test here today. But they are looking at still going for it. It's not something that they're scrubbing, but it sounds like they might be just working a little bit something on the test stand. And as I said, this is not a demonstration. This is a test. So they want to make sure they do it right. And they do have a 2-hour time window, which they've now started about an hour earlier. So they do have a good chunk of time that they will be able to do the test here if they need to delay a little bit. So let's listen back in. Again, welcome here to the launch pad. If you have questions, let us know in the chat, and we will try to answer those for you. You're watching the launch pad live coverage of the SLS Green Run hot fire test.
For those two propellants, and then when it comes time for ignition, you know, in less than a second, you know, we're getting up to a few thousand degrees temperature.
That's a big difference, really quickly.
Yeah, it's very fast, you know, and that's part of the thing which propels the core stage and the rest of the SLS off of the Earth's surface.
I gotta say, you're keeping calm you've got a cool level head right now, but I have to imagine you're excited about this. You've been working on this for years.
Yeah, you know, it's an absolute surreal experience, you know, for everyone who's been working on this, you know, for the last few years and even longer than that. You know, I think everyone's really excited about the core stage test. Everyone's excited to see it be launched for Artemis I and for the future Artemis mission. So I know the whole team's working hard. You know, the team in our test control center is working very hard. So, you know, I think everyone's just looking forward to it.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the team because we see some people here, but it's actually people across the country. Can you talk to us a little bit about the different companies that have gone into integrating with NASA here and how all that comes together?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we have thousands of parts on the rocket, you know, and there's tons of companies and subcontractors, you know, small companies, big companies. And so, you know, we've had parts from more than 44 states across the nation. And then obviously, you know, our Boeing contractor, our lead contractor for the project, you know, they've been working hand in hand with NASA the whole time. Those teams have really been performing really, really well thus far. And then obviously, our RS-25 engines supplied by Aerojet Rocketdyne. I mean, you know, all three of our teams have done a really good job of getting to today.
Well, Alex, thank you for being in the hot seat, explaining everything to me and to everyone at home. We are actually going to move forward now. We're going to give you a little bit of a break. Feel free to take some water and listen in. We actually would love for you to listen in to the control room so we can come back and ask you exactly what they're talking about. Give us a breakdown. I'm excited now to be talking to an astronaut who is here with us, Tracy Caldwell Dyson. Tracy, it's so great to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here, so it's going to be exciting.
Well, first I want to talk to you about the act of launching off this planet. You have flown on the shuttle, STS-118 specifically, and one of those engines that flew you to space is powering this very core stage. That's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
All right, I have to ask you first basic question. What does it feel like to launch?
Oh gosh, there's so many feelings. Even before you even get inside the vehicle, as you're walking up to the launch pad, and you see this mammoth rocket standing before you. And from the sensations to the things that you see to the things that you realize, you've got a job to do, but yet you're doing this incredible, you're having this incredible experience. From the light off of the engines to the lift off, the swaying of the rocket, the rumble, all of the vibrations, the controlled explosion happening underneath you, to the constant acceleration that you're feeling as you're propelled into orbit, to the engines are throttling. All you know is that you're just going fast, and then you're in there with your buddies. You've been training all this time. You get to the solid rocket boosters. As soon as they expend their energy and they separate from the vehicle, and you're just riding on those main engines, the RS-25s. I remember being so impressed with how smooth and powerful that ride was. It was like riding on rails. And then, of course, the moment you get into orbit, it's some of the most strange tranquility that you've ever experienced in your life.
I want to ask you to do something here, if you'll indulge me for a second. Let's just take a look back, because we are about a mile away from SLS.
Well,
as you take a look at that, what's going through your mind?
You know, I have to give it up for the folks that are in the control room right now, because I can remember how I felt standing at the foot of the rocket before I launched on it. But all of those folks, like Alex was mentioning, that have played a role in this, plus the ones that are around the test stand, that is their baby. And when those engines light, there's a lot of hands and eyes and hearts and soul that are in every ounce of thrust that are coming out of those engines. And so I think when I look at that, I just think about all of the people who make up the body of that rocket and the thrust that's coming out of it. And I'm really excited for them.
Excited for all of us.
Yeah.
And it's exciting for all of us here. And what's the difference with the excitement in the astronaut community?
Oh, goodness. Well, I tell you what, there's a whole lot of other blue flight suit folks that wish that they were here today. We are just genuinely excited about this opportunity to go further than low Earth orbit and explore again our moon, and to set a foundation along with those footprints, and to go beyond that. And to just be here at this time with all this excitement is a real privilege for all of us. But as a Corps of astronauts, we're just really excited about where we're headed. So.
All right, you said moon. So as we progress towards the moon, talk to us about the significance of the human element in space. Why is it so important to put humans back on the moon?
Oh, goodness. I think there's so many ways to answer this, but I think, you know, we have it inside each one of us to discover, to explore, to let out our creativity. And I think the reason it's important for humans, I mean, technically it's important because we know how to make decisions right then and there, especially with time delays and not having a camera view every single place you need to look. It's, I think, vital to have humans involved. But the spirit of exploration is within our hearts, and there's no other way to live it out but to send our humans to these destinations.
And there's a lot of people watching today, and a lot of kids watching today, young girls watching today. Do you have anything you want to say to them specifically?
Oh, goodness. Well, with what time we have left, I would say that the most important thing to do is to know what you enjoy doing, and start now taking note of those things, because what we really want is the best in you, and what brings the best in you out for everyone to see is doing the things that you enjoy. And so I would encourage everyone to go and explore all the things that you are doing right now, and ask yourself if you didn't have to get a grade in this, would you still be doing it? And so I just think that it's within their reach to fulfill their dreams, as long as what they're doing is what they enjoy.
Stay curious.
Stay curious, absolutely.
Well, Tracy, I'm lucky to be with you. We're both lucky to be here right now, but there are a lot of people at home who've got questions for you, too. Would you mind if I asked you some questions off of Twitter?
Please do.
All right. We're going to jump to a few questions we've gotten in. The first one is from Amber. Amber on Twitter asks, what is the main mission, or what do you hope to learn with these next series of landings?
On the moon, I think what we are trying to learn is just make sure we know how to get back there, and then to set up.
So I'm going to jump in here a little bit while they're answering some questions from their Twitter. You can tweet them with the hashtag AskNASA, and they might get you an answer to your question. I've been watching their feed, and they've been really answering a lot of the questions really quickly. A couple of things about it. I think one really great question is, why is it named the Artemis program? You know, we have the Apollo program and Space Shuttle. Well, Artemis is the twin sister to Apollo, and Artemis is the goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. So it kind of just makes sense. Artemis mission, it's paving our way back to the moon for a lunar landing with humans in 2024. So it fits. We're going to have the first woman on the moon, the next man on the moon, the first Canadian on the moon. It sounds like Canadians will be the next country that will be landing on the moon, which I'm super excited about as a Canadian. But, you know, where, you know, American astronauts have been, but no one else has been. And it just makes sense that that's why they called it the Artemis mission. It's the sister to the Apollo era. For it, another question people were asking is, why is it orange? Why does it look kind of rusty? Type of thing. A lot of people were saying, you know, the shuttle had an orange tank, but it did have a white one on the first mission. That orange is actually a thermal protection system around the core, which protects the rocket from the harsh environments it faces during launch and flight. The thermal protection actually naturally tans from a bright yellow to this burnt orange. So right when they painted originally, it's actually a very bright yellow. For the space shuttle, they did paint the first one white, but then they decided for the extra time, the effort, and the weight even it added, because you have to think, like, that's a lot of paint. Even though if you do a thin coat, it takes quite a bit to cover the size of that booster. For it, the core stage is made up of 5 major components. So we've got the engine section, we've got the liquid hydrogen tank, we've got the inner tank, we've got the liquid oxygen tank, and then we have the forward skirt. And that is what they're testing today. It is over 212 feet tall. or 27.6 feet in diameter. And when it's fully loaded, the entire thing weighs 2.3 million pounds. When it's empty, it's only like 188,000 pounds. So they're loading over 2 million pounds of fuel, which is why they started loading that fuel about 2 hours ago into it. And we're going to take a listen in here because they might be going. Let's see. I'm going to bring this full screen and we're going to listen in here. But they all stopped talking and put sound on. It is 2 o'clock, which is when they were aiming for the test launch or test window for today. So we might be just moments away from the test of SLS. NASA really bringing to life SLS with a full 4 engine 8-minute test firing. If all goes well, we should be on track to see a launch of SLS with a payload back to the moon by the end of this year. Again, if you have questions, let us know in the comments. Yeah, they're all really quiet, so they got to be getting ready here. We are waiting to see the test of the SLS core center stage. You can hear the wind. Beautiful day.
And a reminder, we are in a dynamic situation. The teams are in a hold right now. We are still well within our window for today's test. The teams are working towards getting an updated test time for today. So we have Alex with us, and Alex, we were listening into a little bit of the control room audio. What does it mean that we're in a hold, and what were you hearing from the control room?
Right, so right now we're still in a stable replenish, and basically what that means is we're still getting fuel into the tanks from the facility, and the replenish cycle is kind of meant to maintain topping off the tanks to their full capacity as some of that liquid does turn back to gas, and we've been off that gas. So we are in a stable replenish phase. Obviously, some of our engineers in the test control center are seeing some data that they don't like or might be not exactly normal from what they usually see. So those teams are off now, kind of having sidebar conversations with each other to kind of determine what we need to do to go forward.
So I want to go back, because all this might be obvious to you, but we're trying to figure out where we are in this whole process. We thought, we might just come here and see the engines light up, but that's not what happens. So what happened up until this point, and what are we waiting on now?
Right, so like we said, we've powered on the vehicle, right, over the last few days. We've repaired all the systems, we've tested all the systems, and then this morning we started tanking, by filling both our liquid hydrogen and our liquid oxygen tanks with propellant. And so that's really been the long process today. I mean, obviously we have to chill down our main propulsion system, so all of our mechanical parts have to be chilled down to a certain temperature before we do hot fire as well. So, right now they're obviously working through some issues in that process. And as we learn more, as they learn more, we'll learn more. And so whenever we do hear audio, we'll be able to give a better update.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that process? We're talking about chilling down the engines themselves.
Right, and yeah, all the engines and all the components inside the engine section, which holds...
So I am going to just jump in here while they're kind of talking there a little bit more about what's going on. We are currently in a hold. As they have reminded us, this is a test vehicle. This is not a demonstration. This is not a flight mission. This is a test, and that's why they want to make sure they're doing it right. We saw this yesterday with Blue Shift, waiting for the weather to clear. Even though they could have launched, they wanted to make sure they were getting the right data. We see it with Starship all the time of, let's do a hold. We want to check something, even if They didn't necessarily have to. Better safe than sorry. So we are waiting to hear an update from them on a new T0 time. They're not really releasing a countdown clock for us, but they did release a time they were aiming for yesterday and then earlier this morning when they were ahead of schedule. So we are waiting to hear an update from them on Twitter or on screen. There are 2 hours left in the window today that they have had clearance given to them for this test. They did issue a 60-mile sound notice for this test because they're going to be firing 4 engines for 8 minutes, and that's quite a long time when normally you would launch SLS. You might have 30, 45 seconds of sound, but it gets quieter as it goes. This one is going to stay the same volume, if not just get louder, because that sound is going to bounce off any structure and can be quite a noise. I mean, you can go to Disney and see a rocket launch. You don't hear it, but there's quite a distance there. So obviously that sound, though, does travel. Now, they said they're only a mile away, which normally at a Kennedy launch, the closest you can get is about 2.25, 2.5 miles. So they are quite close. So you can see their ear protection on the table. That is when they are definitely getting ready to go for it. They probably already had it on at 2 o'clock when they thought we were going. So when they grab that or go back to those panoramic shots, we will be expecting a test attempt of the SLS core stage. I'm just keeping an eye on Twitter here to see if we have any update from NASA on what the plan is or what the hold was. As they showed earlier in it, there is a lot of stuff they're testing, more than just the 4 engines. In the test structure and in the facility, they have all the computers laid out. So they're going to switch on all the computers as if it was built into the rocket to be ready to go to have a full test, because the next time we see these 4 engines ignite is when they are going to be sending the Orion capsule back to the moon in an orbit to return. And we're hoping to see that by the end of the year.
In 10 minutes.
I'm just listening in here.
Excited to have you here explaining everything to us. And a reminder to everyone at home, this is a live test. We are still listening in for the control room teams as they review the data of the test up to this point. They are having a conversation right now about the appropriate steps to move forward. So, Alex, we've had a little bit of a talk about those discussions. Again, we're going to be coming back and forth to you. And again, a note to our viewers, we're going to be hearing calls from the test conductor at regular intervals over the next 10 minutes or possibly more. When we hear those call outs, what we're going to do is we're going to pause and listen in. I might turn to Alex and have you explain them to us again. For right now, what we're going to do is pause and listen for some of those so we can try to catch up with the rest of you. And everyone
Here we go. So we're going to try to listen in and hear from the mission control and the test facility to see what is going on. So let's listen in. So right now they have us patched in to hear the kind of mission control audio for the test. I love this shot again. Just look at the size of those engines compared to the stairs that were there. Really gives you a appreciation for the amount of flame and thrust that is going to come out there and the safety that has to be. So we're listening in to see if we can hear any update from them for a new T0. If you have any questions, let us know in the chat. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the like. Really helps us out here. And yeah, we're just going to continue to listen in, and I will come back if we hear any update. So this is a live view into their mission control. You can see them working. Doesn't seem like they're too frantically running around, but definitely people at work, notes being taken, some discussions happening. Hopefully we will hear something on comms here about the update on what we can expect. That was a live view from the Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. And again, if you're just joining us,
All personnel, kind of keep it down in the control room, please. We are coming up on another event here in the terminal countdown timeline, coming up on about minus 40 minutes or about 2 minutes.
So we just heard T40 is coming up in about 2 minutes. So we are in quite a bit of a delay, but it does sound like they have continued the count at this time. So if we did 40 minutes from now, we'd be looking at about 2 minutes, about 2:52, 2:53, somewhere in there. How about 2:55 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Or 55 p.m. Eastern.
Right, all personnel, we're going to be picking up on page 3.27. We're at the T-minus 40-minute time mark and event. Step 4.61, SCE, let's go ahead and initiate the terminal count sequencer IOC for substep alpha. Let's go ahead and enable TCC user underscore hold. Let me know when that's enabled.
Copy. User hold enabled in green.
Copy, and then please enable STCTR48, please, the stage controller terminal countdown engine anomaly, if not already enabled.
STCTR48 enabled in green.
Copy that. Takes us to step 4.62, sequencer. Let's go ahead and perform the stage controller terminal count sequencer setup as follows. Please ensure the countdown timer is open.
CDT window is open.
And ensure your display test commit criteria is also open.
TCC display is also open.
Copy. And we're going to go to substep Charlie. If you would, verifies on the terminal count sequencer that the IOC has been initiated.
Verifying initialization was successful.
Copy. And verify engine configuration is hot fire.
Engine configuration is hot fire.
And verify display configuration is hot fire.
Display configuration is also hot fire.
For substep 4, please record the version of the GLS events table being used for today.
Okay, version hot fire, version R98 Rev 8.
Did you copy that, BQA1?
No, sir.
Engine configuration being used today is hot fire, version R98 Rev 8.
Version hot fire R98 Rev 8.
Correct, Rev Alpha.
Copy, that takes us to top of
A is at Alpha, right?
Hot fire R98, Rev A, copy.
Okay, that takes us to the top of page 328 for step 5. Verify that the engine configuration is the desired version of the GLS events table that you just mentioned.
Confirmed.
And verify the display configuration is also the desired version of the GLS events table.
Also confirmed.
Okay, under your TCS engine status, verify activate sequencer is selected and displayed.
TCS engine status activated.
Copy that. Okay, per the note there, TCS will automatically stop at the T-minus 10-minute hold point. HEA, if you're on 16, step 4.63 is yours.
Copy that. NTC is HEA in 16.
Give him a second. Here's coming to 16.
Go for NTC.
NTC, can you please verify and or perform a helium spin start panel activation per DOP 11 to provide 1,000 to 1,300 PSIG to the CAPUs?
Roger that. It is set up.
Copy that.
It is complete.
Record a UTC on that of 016 21 17 07.
Copy 016 21 17 07.
Copy that, and the NTC, the next step is yours per step 4.64, please.
Roger that. And in BTC, let's go ahead and prepare the deflector for test configuration. And he's on the phone, but he's been coordinating with the water plant, and he'll get the bypasses open in just a moment.
Copy that. And then NTC, per our discussion, we will we will maintain the current timeline and the current countdown time per our discussion.
Roger that. Sounds good.
Again, if you are joining us, we are watching live coverage of the SLS Green Run hot fire test from the Mississippi test facility with NASA. We did reach almost to our T0, and now we do have a new T0 of approximately 4:55 p.m. Eastern, 1:55 Pacific, based on them saying we're going to go into a 40-minute count in 2 minutes. So that is the number that generally people are accepting will be the new ignition time. We do still have about hour and a half, hour 45 into the window available. So let's listen in to see what they're saying.
But we are still well within our window for today's test still, and I am lucky to have Alex here with me. We've heard a lot of conversations from the control room over the past few minutes. I heard hot fire a lot. I heard water a few times. You're the expert. What were you hearing?
So the test conductor instructed everyone to go back into our terminal countdown sequence. And so at this point, we are about 30 minutes away from the hot fire according to the terminal countdown sequence. Some of the other things they're kind of talking about, they're turning on the water deflectors, right, for the engine test. So there's certain configurations that we need to put each thing on the stand or thing on the ground in a certain configuration for that hot fire. So they're supplying certain amount of pressure to different components inside the engine section, and like we said, turning on those water deflectors, retracting some of the stands around those engines, really to prepare the stand and the core stage for hot fire.
We heard at least 2 people talking, is that right? What were those people, what are those positions back there?
Right, so the test conductor is basically relaying information to individuals working a console, and each of those console workers are either going through test criteria, right? So we have test commit criteria for each part of the test. They're looking at different things that are happening with the stand. They may be controlling the water going onto the stand. So he is in direct communication with each person that is working each individual component on the stand. So you'll hear him giving out a lot of commands of things that need to go according to our countdown sequence.
And where are they? They're even closer than we are, right? And they're in a safe place, I hope.
Right, absolutely. They're in a test control center closer to the stand. And that stand is wired, has wires running all the way to the test control center. And in the test control center, they can see everything going on. They can see all the cameras, and they're each sitting at console, and they'll be able to make decisions real time. So, they're sitting in a building. It's fully blast proof, right? It has giant blast doors closed in there. So, the team's working really hard. There's a lot of people in there looking at a lot of stuff. So, they're obviously working through it and working towards hot fire.
And those 2 people we heard, are they sitting close to each other? Are they hearing each other kind of like we're hearing them now?
So the test conductor audio, he's in one part inside the test control room. So, he's talking in a regular voice, kind of like we are. And then he could be communicating with someone on the far end of the room, or he could be communicating with someone sitting right next to him, but that's all over the audio, kind of like we're hearing.
So is this considered normal when you think about testing a rocket?
Yeah, absolutely. That there's a ton of people who play a part in the actual test of a rocket or in the launch of a rocket, right? So you have to have a proper way of communicating, proper one-way or two-way channels, so that the correct people can be heard at the correct time. So everything that's happening is obviously planned as far as, communication and working through issues. And then now that we're in our close to 30-minute terminal countdown, we'll be hearing a lot more things over the radio.
And we heard about this window. So there's a certain amount of time that they have to be able to light these engines. It's not like a launch window where we're trying to reach the moon, so we have to pay attention to that. But what does this window mean? So,
there's certain operating guidelines that we have for certain things in the engine. There's certain times that we can have avionics boxes powered on, and there's certain times that we're allowed to have the batteries running on internal power, things like that. Obviously, while the core stage is integrated to the stand, we have a little more leeway because the stand is supplying a lot of that power, supplying a lot of the materials we need to continue testing. It's going to be more of a process for them to determine what the next step forward is for testing, and I'm sure it's something we'll hear over the test conductor audio.
Okay, I'm going to be coming back to you a lot more. Again, we're going to keep you in the hot seat here, even though it's cold outside. We're all excited for the big hot blast coming in. I think you said about 30 minutes is what we're expecting. So again, what we're going to do, a reminder, this is a live test. We're still listening in for the control room teams as they're reviewing this data as we're leading up to the test point. They're still having a conversation right now about the appropriate steps to move forward. So again, we're going to join you. We're going to take a step back and just watch. We're going to look at the test stand and listen in for the control center. We're going to let Alex digest it all for us, and we'll come back to you in just a few minutes.
So they're going to turn back on that mission control audio here for us and hopefully give us some beautiful views. Okay, there it is. Tests expected at 5 p.m. So we're just going to update our card here. So now we do have an exact time that we can kind of count down towards. So we are 35 minutes away from the expected test ignition of the SLS core. For those of you new joining us, hello, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're watching from. My name's Zach. Welcome to the Launch Pad. Here at the Launch Pad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space, and we're excited to have you with us here today for our live coverage of today's Green Run hot fire test of the SLS core stage. We've got our live feed from NASA here. We're taking your questions in the chat. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, what you're most excited about with SLS. If everything goes well today with this test, this is the final test out of 8 that SLS has gone through, and this will be the final stepping stone before they really start to get ready for their test flight later this year, by the end of the year, which will be sending SLS around the moon with the Orion craft. Super exciting to finally see SLS, after so many years of research and development, really getting ready to take this final step of ignition of all 4 engines for a full 8 minutes, simulating a real test. Now, as they've reminded quite a few times, today is a test. It's not a demonstration. It's not a test flight. The booster's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay right there, or at least that's the plan, and it will fire for a full 8 minutes. NASA has sent out an alert for a 60-mile radius around the pad that there will be elevated sound decibels for a prolonged period of time. Generally, when you launch a rocket, you have the sound of ignition, hits you a little bit later after you've seen it ignite, and then it dissipates as it goes. Well, this one's not moving. It's going to be full thrust. Sounds like they will do some gimbaling as well as some throttling of the engines, because they really want to use this full 8 minutes to get as much data as they can out of this core. Now, the 4 engines they are testing today are historic engines from earlier in the Mercury and the Space Shuttle era. They said they have 16 of these historic engines that they are currently working on, with 4 on this booster, but they are currently also in development of producing new ones using 3D printing. These engines have not been manufactured in over a decade. These were in storage from the end of the shuttle era. So the 4 engines they're testing today is E2045, which had 12 flights, including STS-95. E2056 had 4 flights with including STS-114. E2058 did 6 flights, including STS-133. And E2060 did 3 flights, including STS-135, which was the final shuttle mission. Earlier, they did talk about some of the missions these have gone on, including, I believe it was 10 missions to the International Space Station, returning John Glenn to orbit with Mercury. It had the release of the Hubble telescope was one of these engines. So these are very historic engines. Unfortunately, many are sad to see these engines be used in this way, as this is when they do have a test, we're not sure how they will live. So these historic engines could become damaged, or when they do their test flights, these are stages that are not recovered. So they will either crash into the ocean, burn up in the atmosphere, or just be shot out into orbit. So sad to see some of these historic pieces not sitting in a museum for us to all enjoy and celebrate for years and decades to come, but an exciting leap forward to see that SLS is finally coming to life here today. So we are sitting at approximately 30 minutes until the ignition. The static you're hearing right now is actually the live feed from their control center, which is down there at the test pad. It is a facility full of their scientists, rocket engineers, team leads, and everything that they're running over the data, seeing everything working. This isn't a test of just the engines today, but also a test of all the equipment for it. So they have everything set up as if it was inside the rocket, inside Orion, and they are turning everything on like they would as if they were on the pad, getting ready to launch into orbit and then go to the moon. If you are new with us, I'd invite you to subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have you join us again. As I said earlier, we cover space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space, and we try to cover both the big names and the little names. Yesterday, we covered Blue Shift with their Stardust 1.0 rocket, which is the world's first commercial biofuel engine test. They did have to scrub due to weather, but we'll be covering that again next week. We cover Rocket Lab, SpaceX, especially Starship, hopefully seeing SN9 take to the skies in the next about week to 2. So we hope you will join us for that. We want to give a shout out to our partners S Padre for our live feeds for when we're doing our Starship coverage, and we are excited to be bringing that back here hopefully in the next few days when we are aiming to see a static fire of SN9. These are live views thanks to NASA TV of the SLS core stage. You can see in the bottom right corner all the different camera names and angles that they're showing us and which engines and everything there. Some beautiful shots. I think this is one of the best NASA streams I've seen in quite a while. But obviously this is a test day, and it is hard to navigate having longer holds. You know, not that you script live streams, but you know what you want to talk about up to the launch. And when you get a hold of, you know, not just 5-10 minutes, but a longer period of time, I think this is the best thing they could do, is letting us just see the engine, see the rocket, and listen in. Now, we're not hearing a ton from control, which means their teams are working through their terminal count. They have their checklists and books, and if they need to talk, we'll hear them talk. But they know what they're doing. They have gone through dress rehearsals and everything in the last few days, getting ready for this, because the world truly is watching as SLS gets ready to ignite its 4 RS-25 engines for today's test. A little bit more about the SLS core center stage. Here it weighs 188,000 pounds when empty, or 85.275 kilograms. That's that orange tank that you see there. That descends all the way down to those 4 engines that we saw on the previous shot. It's 212 feet tall, or 64.6 meters, and 27.6 feet in diameter, 8.4 meters. There's a shot underneath, and you can see it there even just with the doors, the size of this booster. This is not a small rocket. This is going to be the largest rocket tested in history, very close to Apollo, slightly shorter with the Block 1 design. Block 2, which will be coming in the next few years, will be slightly taller than the Apollo Saturn V rockets for it. Massive capacity with this booster. It can hold up to 2 million liters of liquid hydrogen, LH2, which weighs up to 317,000 pounds. And then on top of that, it can hold 1.86 million pounds of liquid oxygen, LOx, which is 742,000 liters. So a lot of fuel. They did go for give the go for fueling a couple hours prior to test, and right now they're just maintaining that. You'll see a little bit of venting off of the rocket, and that's just them keeping the rocket fueled and cold and ready for this test. Now, should this test be successful, we are expecting to see the first test flight of SLS by the end of the year, up into orbit and then back to the moon. This will be a non-crewed mission. It will have some payloads, and it's mostly a test flight. They want to make sure everything works in the full thing before they start trying to send payloads out to orbit and back to the moon. Now you can see it here, but those big tanks on the side are actually barges that have been brought up next to the test facility, and that is the liquid oxygen that is getting pumped in. Those are each a barge that's brought up through the river and then piped in through the test facility system into the rocket. I believe there's 5 or 6 of them there currently. I believe it took 6 to fill the rocket. From what I was seeing earlier, and it just, comes up that river there, right into the testing stand. This stand was used for Apollo, the Saturn V testing, as well as some other tests, including the shuttle. So I'm going to take a quick break here. I'll leave their audio up, so we're going to take a listen in. We are currently about 25 minutes away from ignition of the SLS core stage for the hot fire green run test. And we're just going to listen in. Again, if you have questions, let us know in the chat below, and I will be back in just a few moments. I'm going to jump back in here again. We did just get a tweet from the NASA administrator, Jim Bridenstine, with an update about today's test. He said teams are evaluating pressurization data before they are ready to proceed. The test is now expected within an hour. So that 5 o'clock time window may or may not be their current plan. They're reviewing all this data. So we are going to stay live here. I'm going to take a quick break, and we'll pop back if we have more information. But it looks like we are in another hold as they evaluate some more information about the pressurization of the SLS core stage. Now that looks like they might have turned on the water. I'm not too sure. That's the most we've kind of seen coming out of the facility as of today. So we're actually going to stay live here and see what is going on. Yeah, definitely some strong, I think it's venting from the engines there. And you can see it there as well. Again, if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. There's a live feed back into their control room at the John C. Stennis Space Center. Yeah, you can see those vents really picked up, and that's what's giving us that big white cloud coming out from that ramp area. Again, the sound of like the static that you're hearing is the raw feed from their control room for what they're releasing to the public. So we haven't heard them speak a lot lately, but we are listening in to hear if they give any updates on this current delay. I also have Twitter here that we are checking to see if Jim or NASA tweet giving us any further updates. While we wait, I see there's a number of you here in the room. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Zach. I'm the host here at the Launchpad. I invite you to take a moment and subscribe to our channel. You can hear the wind there. Subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have you join us for future broadcasts. We also every week do a weekly update on Monday evenings of everything that took place in the last 7 days and everything to look forward to in the next 7 to 10 days. 2021 is a year full of exciting new launches and tests, and some launches that are just, we know what we're doing, like SpaceX with their Falcon 9. They know what they're doing. They hit launch and it goes for it. So we try to cover everything we can of both the big names and the little names. If you have any tips on organizations, launches, landings, tests that you would like us to cover, either in our update or its own dedicated video, make sure to let us know either in the comments, on Twitter, or the best place to join us and stay up to date is on our Discord. We talk about upcoming videos, things, how you can get involved, and things there. Later this week, we are going to be starting our build of the Mega Block Space Shuttle. It is a 2005-piece shuttle that was released in 2002. So we are excited to be adding that to our set behind us, and we would invite you to join us there. Again, I'm going to take a quick break, see if I can learn anything more, and we'll be back here shortly. Again, this is Zach from the Launchpad. Be right back. Again, hello to everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending where you're watching from. My name is Zach. Welcome to the launch pad. Here at the launch pad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and
you are watching NASA's
let's listen in.
Green Run hot fire test here at Stennis Space Center. The teams are in a hold, but we are still well within our window for today's test. And we did just get an update. And so we've got our expert here, Alex, a core stage engineer. Alex, what did we just hear from the control room?
So our test conductor is kind of discussing a path forward, obviously, with our test. Right now, we're about the T-minus 10-minute mark, so we're in a holding pattern for that T-minus 10. They're going to go around and continue to monitor our fuel levels, our propellant, how much propellant we have, not only in the core stage itself, but also we have on reserve. And then over the next 10 to 15 minutes, they'll kind of have a discussion about our propellant reserves, the path forward, and whether we're going to go into that T-minus 10-minute countdown sequence.
Okay, so we heard about one hold earlier when we started taking our pauses and listening in. This sounds like we're in a different hold, is that right?
Right, so the T-minus 10 hold is really the last major milestone before we get into a lot of the major operations that we use to get into the actual hot fire. So, starting at the T-minus 10 mark, every minute we have a lot of very important tasks that we'll be doing up until hot fire.
Okay, so let's walk through those. What else will we expect to hear once we hit T-minus 10? And then what are some of the calls we can expect to listen in on and expect going forward?
Right, so once we start T-minus 10 count, we'll have a lot of software that gets initiated to start the hot fire, right? And some of that's automated, some of it's not. We'll move into activation of some of our major propulsion components. We'll turn on our CAPUs at about the 4-minute mark, and those are used to kind of steer our engines with our hydraulic system. From there, we'll start certain purges inside the engine section, and then we'll move into internal power within the rocket, so it's fully powering itself, and then we'll start the engine sequence.
And a reminder, this is a live show. We are listening into the control room. It's very important that Alex doesn't just keep talking, giving us interesting answers the whole time, because he needs to listen in to be able to digest what we're hearing so he can tell us what's going on and we can get more of an update. So we're going to do that now. We're going to take another pause. We're going to sit back with you just like you are at home, and we're going to watch the test stand. We're going to have Alex listen into the control room so we can come back and find out when we can watch the SLS core stage hot fire test. We'll be right back.
So I do appreciate that they're coming in every once in a while and giving us an update. I'm not sure they've patched us in to actually hear the audio from control, because they said he's listening in and hearing updates. But we have not been hearing anything on this, so I'm wondering if maybe they put the wrong volume controller or something. They've got something on right now. So from that update, they are currently evaluating the fuel reserves that they have for the liquid oxygen and hydrogen to see how long they can hold for to figure out what's going on before they have to determine if they do have to indeed scrub for today. So we're hoping they don't have to, but that is something that's always on the table. Scrubs are always better than RUDs, as everybody seems to say with SpaceX. So we will wait and see an update here what's going on. We originally had an updated T0 of the 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 Pacific time zones, 2 Pacific, and we are currently coming up on that. It has been delayed again since that, and there's no exact T0 at this time. They are holding at the T-minus 10 minutes and counting into the countdown, so that's a good thing, which means they're further along in their terminal count. Once they pick up and resume that count, we'd be 10 minutes away from ignition, and then we would be waiting to see the ignition of the SLS center core stage. Incredible views that they're showing us. That white that you're seeing coming out of the tubes there from below the rocket, or the ventings from the engine, of them just maintaining the fuel and everything to be ready for this test. They have not emptied the rocket fuel. It takes a number of hours to fill it, which is why they actually ended up starting at about an hour early, which has been quite nice, because this means they've had that extra time to be ready for the test and have these hold times. So, like they said, we're going to take a pause. If you're new here to the Launchpad, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited that you're here. Give us a hand and hit that subscribe button. It really does help us keep the channel going, and the like lets YouTube know that people might be interested, so they show it to more people. So if you can help us out with that, that would be great. Make sure to join our Discord. The link is in the description. We have a great community over there, and you can be involved in letting us know about future events or talking about what type of new videos we are working on that we would love to have your input on. We're going to take a quick pause, keep listening in, and I will be back here in a few moments when I have an update. We'll see you soon.
And if you've been with us since the top of the show, you've heard me say this a few times, but we are so happy you're still here with us. You are watching NASA's Green Run Hot Fire Test here at Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. The teams are still in a hold, and we are still within today's window for the test. We do have an update, so I'm excited again to have Alex Cagnola here with us. Alex, what's happening right now?
So right now our teams are still kind of doing some preps before we move into our T-minus 10-minute count. There's a lot of just individual preps you have to do on the stand, individual components. You know, certain configurations we have to put everything in before we actually do perform that hot fire. You know, they're going around, they're polling all of our program management and our chief engineers to see, you know, are we good to go on, you know, or we need to move on. You know, we're also monitoring other things. You know, we're monitoring how much propellant we have in the tanks, how much propellant we have on reserve on the barges to use for the hot fire. And then just as we work through those issues, we'll hear more information as we get closer.
So you said monitoring how much propellant we have on the tanks. Why is that important at this step?
Right, so this whole time before we go into hot fire, we're in a phase called Replenish Phase. And I know we kind of talked about that, but you know, that fuel is very, very cold, and you know, outside right now, it's not as cold, right? And so, you know, constantly that fuel is being converted into gas and then vented out of the tanks, and then so the entire time we're in a phase called Replenish, where we're constantly pumping a little bit of fuel back into the tanks to make sure it's at max capacity.
And we've said at the beginning of this show that this hot fire test can last up to 8 minutes. What I understand is we can learn a lot in just the first few minutes. Is that right?
Right. You know, a lot of the engineering data we're looking to get really comes in the first 250 seconds. So, you know, whenever we do initiate hot fire, you know, we're going to be gimbling our engines a little bit, right? So we'll be moving the engines in a certain pattern that'll kind of mirror what we might expect during launch. You know, we'll be throttling down the engines for a while, and then we might throttle them back up. You know, there's a lot of things that we're going to try out, and most of those things will be in the first 250 seconds. Obviously, we want to go for the full 8 minutes that we will see during launch, but, you know, I think that we'll get a lot of really useful data in those first few minutes.
So you said gimbling the engines, moving them a little bit. It's not like a NASCAR turn or anything like that. We'll be seeing the engines, right? Just small movements? Yeah, it's very, very small movements, and you might not even notice. You know, it's only a few degrees in each way, you know, and you might see a couple of them move at the same time, or you might not. But that few degrees can really change your trajectory of your rocket when you do launch it. So it's important to be able to test that here at Stennis while we're hot firing, and not just when the engines are just sitting there, right? It's a lot different when you have all that thrust coming out the bottom of the rocket than it is just testing it without it. So I'd love for you to take a second with me and just take a look back. We can see a little bit of white steam, smoke coming out. Can you describe that for us? Right, so what you're kind of seeing right now is the max deflectors, the water deflectors on the flame ramp, right? So we kind of talked about how much water they're pumping, you know, 110,000 gallons every 20 minutes or so. So it's a lot, you know, it's a lot of water coming out, you know, and roughly 32,000 holes on that flame ramp that are all pumping water. So, you know, obviously you're going to see a lot of mist before the hot fire, and they'll actually even increase the amount of water coming up when we do get closer as well. And those are called flame buckets, am I right? Yeah, that's right. It's a flame bucket. You know, you might even see some flame coming out of there whenever we do light up all 4 engines. So it'll be very exciting. You know, and you know, obviously all the safety systems are in place to take care of that when we do hot fire. Okay, and again, we are still in a hold. In some way, this is a planned hold. We've got different versions of holds throughout the test, and as we get more information, we're going to come back. We still have Alex here with us. I'm not going to let him leave. You're going to stay mic'd into your chair right here because we want your expertise on what's going on. And as soon as we have more information from the control room, we're going to come right back to you. For now, we are going to take a step back and look at the test stand just like you are at home, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
So again, hello everyone. My name is Zach. I'm the host here at the launch pad, and thank you for staying with us as we have our live coverage of today's test firing of the SLS center core, the hot fire green run test. We are currently sitting in a hold at the T-minus 10-minute mark, so a different hold than we were in earlier. There still is quite a bit of time left in the window, so they've still got time there. Currently, from the last updates we have heard, the team is evaluating how much reserve fuel they have in the barges next to the test facility and what their definite cutoff is where they won't have enough of their propellant for the test. But currently they are still going for it. They're monitoring some data and evaluating, and we are waiting to hear an update on that. An exciting thing that is happening that I kind of hope they were going to pull up here is that the NASA Orion has left the building and is currently being transported from the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building to its next location in the multi-payload processing facility. So super exciting day for things SLS, with Orion now on the move, SLS on the test stand, and stuff there. What we are seeing is actually water coming from the stand there. That is also the hissing that we are hearing. They haven't patched us through into mission control like they thought they were going to. So we are waiting to hear any updates from them. We are still here though, so if you have questions, let us know in the chat. Hit the like button, really does help the video, and I will come back if I have any more updates or when we come out of this hold. So thank you for staying with us. You are watching live coverage of today's hot fire test of the SLS Center Core Station. This is Zach with the launch pad, and I'll be back shortly. So we did just get an update from Jim Bridenstine that we are now go to proceed with terminal count. So we are going to take this off the screen here, and it looks like we are ready to proceed.
Our most exciting update in a few minutes. We are now inside terminal count. And again, I'm not the expert here. We've got Alex Cagnola with us, who's going to explain what that means and how did we get to this point.
Right, so the test conductor just came on the audio and alerted us that we're about 9 minutes away, actually. So we'll be getting some pretty regular updates here. We'll be hearing some activation of some different components on the rocket before the hot fire. And obviously there's a lot of steps that we'll be hearing going into the actual hot fire, with things like we talked about CAPU activation, move to internal power. If there's any kind of audio that might slow down the terminal count, they'll kind of come on the air and tell us that too. But right now we are in that final sequence that lasts, 8.5 to 8 minutes. So we're going to sit back and kind of listen for the updates from the test conductor.
And this wasn't one person's decision. This is a full group that has to make the decision that we are ready to keep going.
Right.
I'm going to quickly interrupt there. We did just hear T-minus 8 minutes on the clock. We are ready for the test of the center core engine. We're going to start hearing a lot more updates on the comms, so we are going to listen in here.
And try to make sure that we can all listen in, give him enough time to understand that call. So we just missed one. Again, this is a live show, but I want to get back to how we got to this decision. And again, it's not just one person.
Right, that goes back to, we have a great team working all the engineering issues, and then obviously, they kind of come up with a story about what's going on, and they present that in the best way possible to our program management and to, those who are the big decision makers. And so every time we have a big milestone like this, we have to poll the whole board. Everyone brings up their concerns, or if they think, going forward, what they think, and then do a go, no-go poll. And it sounds like everyone was a go. So we're moving forward to terminal count.
Okay, and again, you can hear some of that test conductor audio. I'm sure you couldn't hear that one because you were talking, giving us a great explanation. But now I do want to know, so within these 10 minutes, we're now about 7 minutes, I understand. What are we expecting to hear from the test conductor?
Right, you'll hear a test conductor say a few things like initiate purge start, and that purge will be a nitrogen gas purge inside the engine section. That's part of just the normal sequence of purging the whole area around the engines before you initiate hot fire. You'll hear move to internal power. That's a big one. We'll take all the boxes and all the batteries, everything on board. The core stage will be powering itself, almost like you would have during launch. And then you'll move into ALS start, which is our pre-ignition engine start, and that'll be right before, 30 seconds before T0, where we'll power up the engines.
Okay, so we're about
6 minutes on my mark.
We just heard about 6 minutes. Was that right?
That is 6 minutes away, so they're going to start really having a lot more calls on the audio. We're going to hear, we might even hear some things being turned on inside the core stage. So, obviously we'll start talking less as we hear more audio comes through.
Okay, sure. What will those things sound like?
So you'll hear TCC, more and more calls. They'll be talking to more in the control room with individuals. They'll be talking to people.
Go ahead, sir.
Looks like somebody opened a terminal TCS window.
Yeah, nobody else should have the TCS GUI. If you have it open, please close it at this time.
So right, they're just working through some small things between all the monitors. They're opening and closing certain things that need to be closed inside the Rocky. From the stand. They're going to completely secure the stand with everything that needs to be done before the hot fire. And really, it's just the final preps before we do initiate engine start.
Okay, again, you are all hearing what we're hearing. We're pausing whenever the test conductor is speaking or other people in the control center are speaking because we're trying to learn what's happening to the rocket.
On my mark.
It sounds like about 5 minutes away on their mark. Again, remind us who's the one in our ear. What's that role?
So that's our green run test conductor, and he's kind of been the one in control of all the green run test cases, not just this one leading up to this point. So he has a great working relationship with all those that are on the test team. And so, obviously, right now we're in T-minus 5 minutes. So there'll be a lot of activation going up until we do hot fire. So, like we said, cap we spin up, move to internal power, purge sequence, and then we'll move into engine activation. It's all going to come pretty quick.
I'm going to pause you for a second.
TCC violation. We're holding at T-minus 4 minutes 40 seconds.
I copy that.
BTD, PEA, it's the Delta P sensors.
Okay. Copy that. We'll wait till we get to the hold at T-minus 440. We're in the hold time. We're in the go. And if you want to go ahead and use that pre-plan.
DLH, let's go to manual mode and try to dial in the lead Delta P, please.
If this is the right time, can you break down what we just heard?
So they're moving into some final sequencing. Obviously, you can see on the flame bucket, they've now initiated max water flow into that flame bucket, so you'll be seeing a lot more mist coming from that flame bucket.
We do have 2 minutes 35 seconds for the hold, so
it looks like you need to come down.
So we are 2 minutes 35 seconds before the 1 minute and 40 hold, from what I understand. So obviously that 1 minute 40 hold will be the last little bit.
Hold timer.
Before we do start up the engine, so it's very exciting.
You're getting excited. I can hear everyone around us getting excited. This is great. And what we're going to make sure we do is we have to make sure we're all being safe here.
Reset that whenever you get ready. We are at 1 minute and 30 seconds in the hold timer.
Okay, if you're in the band, go ahead and reset MPS 17, please.
So we're going to go ahead and take a step back. We're going to put our ear protection on. So we'll be moving into internal power. And again, putting our ear protection on, listening in from here on out, and observing this major milestone on America's return to the moon with Artemis.
The sequencer.
Sequencer activated. Resume and count on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
So I'm going to quickly jump in here. We're going to pull this up full screen and listen in. You are watching the Launchpad live coverage of today's SLS core stage hot fire test, the final test of all the stages. And Artemis program is about to really start kicking into gear if this successful test happens. We are just minutes away, so let us listen in.
Coming up on T-minus T-minus 4 minutes on my mark. Mark. And T-minus 3 minutes on my mark. Mark.
So you can see that water starting to pool. That water is turning on to protect the test stand. We are currently at T-minus 3 minutes. And we're getting excited. This is in that terminal count when things really start getting real, things start warming up and getting ready. So be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe.
2 minutes on my mark.
And we're standing by for T-minus 2 minutes.
Mark.
T-minus 2 minutes on the clock. Here we go.
Come on T-minus 130. Mark.
We should be coming up on T-minus 60 seconds here.
T-minus 1 minute on my mark. Mark.
And there we go. We are in the final countdown here. We're going to listen in and wishing SLS and NASA here is to an incredible test. The next 8 minutes are going to be very exciting for everybody there and everybody watching. So let's take a look.
All personnel report that you're ready to go. PEA. Go. AEA. HEA. Go. REA. Go. NTC. We're go. All right, we're in ALS. Go to engine start. And we're in the plus count. Engine start. We're in the plus count. Call for south, please continue to monitor your system. And grass is in control.
Look at her go. People over 60 miles radius right now are hearing the roar of the SLS center core. Wow, beautiful.
All right, plus 25 seconds.
DDRA, we did get an MCF on engine 4.
Copy that, but we're still running. Still got 4 good engines, right? Copy that.
just heard it there. We do have 4 good engines. They did see something on one of the 4 engines, but they are still good to continue the test with 4 good engines.
Advances through 60, sequence 60 seconds. Get into our first gimbal profile.
BTD is SE.
Gotcha.
BCC violation, correct?
And we got a shutdown.
Oh, we do have a
shutdown. Looks like let's all go to page 656. Page 656, please.
We got a shutdown, which means they did not complete her test. It's not a full, complete 8-minute test. Sounds like they were going to go into a gimbal, and there was a gimbal violation.
Yeah, all personnel, it's going to be post-hot fire or shutdown securing operations on page 656.
So it sounds like they are going to be shutting it down.
Verify with the engine guy.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Standby.
Yeah, all personnel, that does take us to the last page there on page 632. AR1, if you would, on step 4.241, please verify core stage engine 1s and 4 have shut down for that step, and we have a safe engine shutdown.
So it sounds like they had a
Standby engines 1 through 4.
they had a TCS violation. We're waiting to hear more, but they are proceeding with safetying the rocket and shutting it fully down. So unfortunately, not the outcome they were hoping for of a full 8 minutes. You can hear our Discord kind of picking up there. But this is it. This is a test rocket. We are waiting to see what they say, what went wrong, if anything, or if they were just being extra cautious. But this is why this was not a demonstration. This was not a flight. This is a test. So let's listen in.
We just saw the core stage of SLS fire up. Of course, we also heard some test conductor come in, so we want to go straight to Alex. Alex, can you please describe to us, first of all, what we saw and then what we heard?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we had a very successful initiation of the engines. The beginning of our thrust profile there when we were firing for the first minute or so, we obviously were getting some really good data coming through. But like we said earlier, this is a test. We have test commit criteria, and we have certain boundaries that we have to keep all the operations under. So, we really are trying to make sure that everything's operating properly and safely. So, the test team was kind of seeing some data that they might not like, and so obviously, our engines were shut down ahead of the 8-minute scheduled time frame. But we do have a lot of good data to go look at. And hopefully, we can move on from here and maybe get it, see what's going to go on further. So
I was looking at your face when that started lighting up, and that was incredible. We saw the cloud forming. We both saw rainbows just forming right overside. Just how did it feel in those first few seconds?
Yeah, it's amazing. It never really gets old, that feeling that you get, in your chest, or, seeing, just how powerful those rockets are when they're testing. So obviously, it was an awesome thing to see, and, I can't wait to get the core stage to Kennedy and get ready for launch.
And you told us, over 8 minutes we might have had tons and tons, terabytes worth of data, but we already have data just from right now. What are they going to do with that right away? Right, and so just like all of our other green run tests, we have teams that are going to go and break down that data and kind of see what we're seeing in our profiles, right? And so that all goes into the profile that we'll use for launch eventually at Kennedy. So obviously there's a lot of things to look at the data. We kind of talked about over the span of our green run testing, we have roughly 800 terabytes of data, and that's a lot of data. We're talking about it's hard to grasp how much data that is. So we'll obviously take the time to dig through everything, and then obviously have a path forward from there. And I know it happened really fast, but can you tell us what the people were talking about that we could hear from the test conductor in that audio? Right, so after we did engine initiation, they're kind of going through and monitoring everything, right? So obviously once we are actually firing the engines, we have to look at, all of our engine readings when it comes to temperatures, how they're reacting, how they're moving, and all that stuff. We were just getting into our gimbal profiling test, which is, moving the engines around right before we terminated the hot fire. So we're obviously going to have a lot of good data to look at. Great. Thank you, Alex. I'm so glad you're here. And so as the engineers gather data from today, we look at...
I'm going to quickly cut in here for what we're hearing over Twitter from people that were listening deeply into Mission Control. We heard that there was a major component failure detected by the SSME controller. We did hear that call out of there was 4 engines. Do we have 4 still good engines? But it was one of the engines noticed a component failure, and that's what triggered the shutdown. So something did not go right. So we will wait to hear what's going on. But as they were saying, they have a lot of data to go through. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of terabytes, which is a lot. And that was if they had a full 8 minutes. So they've still got probably 100 or 200 terabytes of data from this test that they'll be now going over to read what happened and go from there. But we will probably end up seeing another one of these tests in the future. Hopefully it's not too long, as we were comparing earlier that SpaceX, moves quite quickly because they're a private company. They have the ability, we blew it up, let's build another one. NASA is a government-funded organization, and it takes things are a lot slower and a lot faster. Can't at times, but generally are a lot slower than SpaceX we've seen as a private company. So we're going to keep this stream up to give you a chance to listen in here. If we have any more updates, I'll pop back on if we have more updates that we're hearing for it. But it was definitely an abort due to some sort of component failure. So let's listen in.
And that mixture, and then it ignites, and you see it at T-0. So that's kind of what we were seeing running up to the test. And then after that, you obviously saw the plume and then the rest of the test as well.
And we saw a few different angles. We were up really close to the engines. How are we able to see that?
Well, obviously we have, the cameras and all of our views on the stand are, obviously well-engineered cameras, very protective casings and all that. It's all important that we not only get the data, but all the video and the view of what exactly is going on.
Great. Well, thank you again. We may still come back to you, but I want to remind everyone, it's not just Artemis I. We've got several firsts on the horizon. This year, the first of our commercial lunar payload services, or CLPS missions, begin with 2 companies delivering instruments to the lunar surface. The golf cart-sized Viper rover will search for water at the moon's south pole. A small CubeSat called Capstone will head to the moon, scouting the orbit to be used on later human missions. And Artemis I launches on an uncrewed flight to test both SLS and Orion on a journey beyond the moon and back to Earth. Later on, we'll be launching the Power and Propulsion Element, or PPE, and the Habitation and Logistics Outpost, or HALO, to lunar orbit to become the first pieces of our lunar gateway, which will provide the jumping-off point for lunar missions. Artemis II will be a 10-day crewed test flight where astronauts will set a new record for farthest distance traveled from Earth. And finally, Artemis III in 2024. The hardware for those next 2 Artemis missions is coming together right now at Michoud. The Boeing team is already demonstrating faster manufacturing times by implementing all the experiences and lessons from building the first core stage. In Utah, Northrop Grumman is already building the booster segments for the next several missions as well. We've also got the Orion spacecraft for Artemis II down at Kennedy undergoing assembly. And the spacecraft for Artemis III is also being manufactured right now at Michoud in our hometown of New Orleans. So that wraps it up for us here today after a major milestone on America's return of astronauts to the lunar surface, a successful test of the core stage of the Space Launch System rocket. Up next, we'll be replaying the test, and we will have a post-test briefing in about 2 hours on NASA television. We invite you to follow all of our progress online at nasa.gov/Artemis program, or join the conversation online with @NASA Artemis and @NASA_SLS. Thank you so much, Alex, for being with here and being our expert tonight. Thank you to the administrator, Jim Bridenstine, and astronaut Tracy Caldwell-Dyson. And most of all, thank you for joining us. And go Artemis.
So with that is the end of the of the broadcast today. We saw the test start. Actually, I'm going to pull their feedback up here. We'll just mute it because they're showing a replay here. of what we saw. And it looked good the first minute. I mean, look at that power coming out of the stand here. And it looked good. And 67.7 seconds into the test, right when they were about to start the first gimbaling test of the engines, there was a error and an anomaly that occurred. Based on Twitter, people are saying, it is so much better that this happened now, because if this had happened on a real flight, until they separate those side boosters, which is about 2 minutes or so into flight, aborts are much more difficult. And the fact that this happened on the test stand only a minute into it, this would not have been good if this occurred on a flight. So we're still waiting to hear more from them. Obviously, they've got thousands of gigabytes of data to go through from today's test about what happened. We're still waiting to hear if there is scenarios on if they lost an engine during flight, if they have, either an abort sequence or a secondary way to orbit, things like that. So lots of questions more than answers from today's test. But I think we are going to end our stream here. It has been a few hours covering today's test. We will keep you updated on Twitter and our Discord on anything we learn more and on future tests. We do have Virgin Orbit coming up here shortly. Rocket Lab, hopefully in the next few days. We've got Blue Shift next week. SN8 probably in a week, maybe 2. Lots of exciting, and some SpaceX launches as well with Falcon 9. So lots of exciting things coming up. And we are very excited to see what this is going to look like, what this year is going to look like for SLS. We want to thank all of you for joining us here. If you were new, thank you for joining us here at the Launchpad. At the Launchpad, we cover everything space, space flight, space engineering, and the future of space, and we were so happy to have you with us today. My name is Zach. I am the host here at the Launchpad, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.